If you're finding that times are getting tough and you're not feeling particularly resilient and it keeps on leading you to falling off track, today's guest is going to be giving you the full run through of how to build more resilience and, well, how her journey has led to her needing to build that resilience up and the practical takeaways that we can kind of, do that to make sure that you can build better health habits. So without further ado, welcome back to Body Beyond the Scales, the podcast that helps you get stronger and more confident in your body through building better habits. I'm joined by Leah. Leah, who are you?
Hello, I'm Leah. I'm a physique and mindset coach. I coach those that aren't ready to settle for almost, that want to make sure that they are fulfilling their potential and not allowing past traumas, things they've been through, or the limiting beliefs that they have to stop them achieving the life that they want. It's not even just about the physical transformation. That is a big part of it, because I believe that being physically healthy, being happy in the body physically, and also then like being able to move and just live life day to day. But I think it all encompasses into the people that I coach is both physique, mindset, and just general development.
Yeah, cool. So, Leah, we're obviously going to talk about your journey today, but can you give us a bit of a rundown, I guess, first off of the background? What was like your relationship with exercise and your relationship with like health, like when you were younger?
When I was younger, it was a strange one, to be honest. Like, I think exercise has always been a really big part of my life. So I was, when I was young enough, I was on the girls' football team, the boys' football team, and the mixed football team. They would put me in goal because it was fun. Like, they'd be like, we can all go play football. You just stand there. You just stand there and hold that goal. Like, I've always loved being physically active. Like sports day, PE, like that was my bag. That was exactly where I wanted to be. Whereas my relationship with myself and my relationship with food hasn't always been great. Like disordered eating, whether that was binge eating, bulimia, like they are all things that really took up a big part of my life when I was younger. And that never changed how I felt about like physical movement. Physical movement has always been something that I found like so much happiness and joy in, and the ability to just like completely escape whatever was going on in here. And that was like pre-knowing that exercise is good for the mental health. Like that was before I was even conscious enough to know that. I just knew that when I was being physically active, I always felt my best. Whereas the relationship that I still had with myself, and especially surrounding food, wasn't great. I would say probably up to the age of even 17. Like it wasn't even just like super early years. Leading into like late teens, I think was when the switch of I really need to focus on me and developing myself mentally as well as physically, like came into it.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point that you've made there, that like exercise is very useful and you can move your body, but it doesn't necessarily mean that everything, even if you look a certain way off, like have certain health habits, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Like you have those behaviors, it doesn't necessarily mean that you are like healthy in every aspect of your life. Like I think that's really interesting. So then what happened at 17? Why did the switch flip?
I think the switch initially, I would say it happened because I left high school. School was a very traumatic place. I hated it. Like it. Do you know when you're younger and people are like school are the best years of your life?
Yeah, absolutely not. Where are you getting this from?
Yeah, there was truly times when people would say that to me, and I'd be like, I can't do this. If this is the best it gets, I can't do this. I'm tapping out. And once I thought I never had a desire to go to uni because I'm already miserable and I don't pay for this situation. Why am I going to go to uni and extend what I'm going through and lose money? That didn't make sense to me. And so I always felt really lost when I was younger because everybody always pushed for, what are you doing at uni? Are you going to uni? What do you want to study? What do you want to become? Blah, blah, blah. And I didn't have an answer. And then we went to a school fair when I was 13, just before you start to choose your options in year 9. We went to like a uni job fair type thing. The army was there, the navy was there, and Marines, like all the forces. And I remember walking around and literally just like not even looking at any of the unis because I was like, if I have to go, like, I guess, but I literally have no desire. And I remember my cousin was in the RAF at the time, but I remember getting to their table and they were talking and I was like, I don't want to do this. Like, this is weird. Marines, women weren't allowed in the Marines then anyway, so that didn't matter. And then I got to the army. I remember them talking, and they were talking about the things they did and the community they had and the routine. I've always been a lover of routine and structure and knowing what I can and what I can't do. And like, I know that's where I thrive. And then they were talking about the physical aspects of stuff and how you could be this level if you got such and such on your run time. It's like a good. If you would then get to this level, it'd be like above average. On this level, it'd be excellent. And I remember my brain just started firing. I wanted to be excellent in everything. And I was like, this is what I want to do. And I remember going home and being like, I want to join the army. And my mum was like, do you know what? We'll send you to cadets. My mum was like, do you know what? If you're going to do it, you've got to try it first. Really thought, because I was a very anxious kid as well. Like I wouldn't say boo to a goose. I would not conversate with people. I would cry a lot. Like anything could rock me. And she was like, the army and you are not, that doesn't align. And so I got sent to cadets, and they were so sure that I would go and I would hate it. And it would be, she doesn't like being shouted at. She doesn't like being like told what to do or having to do X, Y, and Z, whatever. I remember getting to cadets, and maybe in the first month or so, like just being like, this is my happy place. This is exactly where I want to be. Like I would get in, I would love the fact that I had uniform, I had kit that I would iron, and I knew exactly where the creases should be and the folds should be. And I knew how my night ran, because I would start with parade and we would do this lesson, have a break in this lesson, blah, blah. And I was like, this is it. This is my life. And from the age of 13 to 16, I was Leah that was joining the army. That was all the biggest kind of identity title that people would smack above my name. Anyone that knew me, I was going to join the army. At 16, when I went to join, they didn't have space in the regiment that I wanted to join, and they were pushing me to signals, which is like very tech based, which is not my bag at all. And I was like, oh, I don't want to do that. And he was like, you could be an officer though. Like you need A levels to do that, but with your GCSEs, like you have the academic ability to do that. So you can go and get your A levels and come back when you're 18. The other regiment I wanted to join, you also had to be 17 in 6 months anyway. So I was like, do you know what? I'll just get my A levels. It's not going to kill me. Do you know what I mean? It's a couple of years. But then when I left school, I was like, I'm not letting school carry through to college.
Mm-hmm.
And that was where that switch happened, because I was like, I might only be doing this for 2 years, but it's still like when you're in 2 years, that's a long time. Looking from the outside, you go, 2 years is nothing. But I knew to exist in that 2 years, it was going to be a lot. And that was where that switch of I have to try and start like making that change with how I see myself, because that will obviously project externally to others as well. And I would say, yeah, that's where that little mindset, like that first almost glimmer of who I am right now kind of appeared.
Yeah. That's really interesting, because obviously, like, it sounds like you were quite lost up until the age of about 13, and then all of a sudden you had this like super clear direction, and
Absolutely.
you had this like, yeah, you had this like identity, and you had this thing about you which you kind of thought that you were going to do. And then yeah, so obviously you then went to like do your A levels, and then what happened?
So I did my A levels, obviously sports. I did science and psychology, which was again quite fitting with where I ended up. I don't know why these connections weren't made earlier. And in just before I left, but just before I finished college, I then reapplied for the army. And in that summer, my assessment date was in the September of 2019. But in the August, I was hit by a car, which then caused me to have a bleed on the brain. I couldn't walk properly. I couldn't feed myself. Like the way that I best describe it is that I regressed to being a child again. I had to have help 24/7 pretty much. Like I couldn't remember in the first week or so, there was a lot of things that I just couldn't remember in terms of, even still, like there'll be like specific words where I'm like, my brain knows what it is, but I cannot connect to my mouth in the slightest. And I would look at things and I'd be like, I know what it is, but I don't know what I remember so vividly that the nurses came round and they would do like brain exercises to kind of assess where I was and stuff. And one of them was like a sheet and it just had random pictures and like objects and whatever. And I think one of them was, it was either a penguin or a camel. And I remember just looking at it and like being like, I've seen this before. Like the thing isn't void, but what the fuck is it called? I cannot connect the dots on what that is called. And I think I remember because it's such like a rogue thing to be like, I don't know what this is. And obviously with all that happened, I couldn't join the army. The brain hemorrhage meant that I was now at risk of seizures and I can't be handling live weapons, of course, when I'm at risk of seizures. Shock, horror, I know. And so I would say that was then, I would probably there has been different points, like obviously school was a really hard time, but like that was the lowest point because the thing that I had worked from the age of 13 to achieving was now none. I remember like crying so aggressively because I was like, I have nothing left. I'd put my whole being into getting into the army. That was all I was, all I had. And I remember that cry where it's like, it's quiet and your eye, it just streams and it hurts because I was like, I have nothing. I have nothing left. Like, I don't know what life is at this point. I need help getting my socks on. My dad gets me in and out of the bath and I'm too tired to feed myself. Where do we go from here? When I literally was a very strong physically, like I was strong, I could run. I had lost everything that was like everything that was me, I no longer had.
Yeah. And especially at that point as well, like you couldn't feed yourself, you couldn't walk, you couldn't do anything for yourself. Like not only had you lost your entire like identity, but you'd also lost your like capacity and your capabilities. Like, and that must have been so like, yeah, like so difficult just to have experienced and like so like heartbreaking.
Yeah, for sure. Like as anxious as I was, I've always been a very independent person. Like got a job 2 weeks after I left school. Like as soon as I knew I couldn't join the army at 16, I was like, well, how do I make money? How do I become independent so that I don't have to get the bus to college? So I was like, okay, let me get a job and let me get my driving license. I paid for my driving lessons. I then saved up enough money by working extra shifts on like before college or after college, and everything that I was being physically active, going to the gym, running, working, being independent just completely disappeared like one day.
Yeah. And then what happened then? So obviously now you can walk. So like, how did that
I
process go?
can.
So, you have legs now, so that function. So like, how did that go? Like in terms of like the recovery? Obviously, I'm assuming it wasn't a speedy process, but like, what were pardon the pun, the steps that you had to take to get there?
So there was obviously a lot of therapy, like physiotherapy, occupational therapy. So I was in hospital for just under 2 weeks, actually. There wasn't anything, but so besides my head, so like I had a broken jaw, dislocated jaw, bleed on the brain, nothing else was actually broken, which the doctors were very confused about. They were like, with such an accident, especially to cause you to have a bleed on the brain, they were like, I don't know how like there's not a broken leg, a broken arm, like something. So me not being able to walk was a strange one because it's not like I physically did, like my muscles hadn't torn, bones weren't broke. It was a mixture of me not being able to connect to my muscles in terms of like my pelvis was not stable. My pelvis was doing everything. So I would stand up, but I could not find like my center of mass, which meant I was back and forth. I wasn't strong enough muscular to like walk for a long time. Like I was getting so fatigued and stuff. So building up my endurance, actually learning to then reconnect with my body and have the ability to walk and stand up, and working with the occupational therapist was around doing like daily tasks of like washing, or I used to bake a lot. So it was like, okay, can we get you baking once a week or whatever, like just being in the kitchen and doing things that again make you feel more human.
Yeah.
And then I think that was like the main bulk of like the initial, because I had to stop all of that because we went into lockdown before I was recovered. I was out of hospital in the start of September, and then we went into lockdown in the April, and I still was in a wheelchair at that point. But obviously with COVID, like we didn't have any visits to the hospital or people like coming into the house and stuff. So it then was a bit of a strange one because I had no actual like appointments of people coming in and helping me like recover. So then it just kind of fell into my own hands to take the accountability, and my own desire to get better had to be the driving force of me putting in effort into my physio and working and building up that strength day to day. Even on the days when I'm like, I'm exhausted, it didn't matter because no one else was going to do that work for me. And I knew I didn't want to live in the situation and in the life that I was living right then. So I was like, well, I've just got to do it.
Yeah. Was it, I guess at that point, what made you think I'm gonna, or I guess what spurred on the idea of a new identity? Because quite frankly, your identity of going into the army, I'm assuming, went crashing down like as soon as you woke up and you were like, well, this is not going to happen. So I guess how did your purpose shift, or what did your purpose shift to? Did it just shift to getting better, or was there something else?
I think so. In the initial stages, yes, absolutely. My sole focus was on just not being where I was. I didn't
Being a functioning
want to,
human.
yeah, like I didn't want to rely on a wheelchair. I didn't leave the house on my own for 6 months. My anxiety was so bad that something bad was going to happen, that I would only ever leave if like my dad was with me or my mum or my sister or whoever. So my main focus, I think I left the house for the first time on my own in the June, I think it was. It was just short of a year that I'd not been out on my own for. And that was literally just for a walk. And the whole purpose up until that point was getting to that point, was becoming somebody who could just leave the house and go for a walk. And so it's like, I would say there's been small phases of becoming the next version of myself.
Yeah.
It's not like me back then didn't envision who I was now. I never, like, it wasn't, oh, so in what, we're on 6 years, 7 years now. So me then wasn't thinking of who I am right now. It was, okay, who do I want to be in this next 12 months, this next 18
Yeah.
months, and so on.
Yeah. I think as well, like there, having that, like, I guess, shorter term goal is really important to like not be like, okay, where am I going to be in 20 years time? The question is more like, okay, well, how do I get myself to the next step? Like, how do I get
Yeah,
myself to the next version, not the next 7 versions down the line? Like, what is the next like
a
version?
thousand
And
percent.
yeah, like, and what do you need to focus on there? But I think the other thing that I took from that is like how privileged we are to be able to leave the house and not have to worry about, like, to be able to just leave the house and go for a walk, like, and not have to think about, oh, is my body not going to work? Like, and if something that I absolutely love to do is just to go for a walk. So like, if you are someone who is listening to this and you are just like, do you know what, I can leave the house, just if you can take like 20 seconds just to be grateful on your next walk that you can just go for a walk, like that is just such a useful thing to do. Like, I'm really big on just reflecting on like and being grateful for the experiences that you have, and I think just you saying that then just really like epitomizes that we should be grateful for the ability to just walk, like
Yeah,
as
no,
small as that is. Yeah.
absolutely. Like a really big thing I preach to my clients is like when people like, or not even just clients, just in general, when people are like, why would you do that? Or how would you do that? I'm like, because I can. And
Yeah.
I truly think that is a good enough reason to pursue anything that you're passionate about. If that is a physical thing, and you do not even have to be great at it. But if you have an inkling that you want to do something, or you know something is going to better you in one way or another, and somebody's like, but why would you do that? Your only answer has to be because I can. Because there will come a day when you can't, when the option and the ability to do so is taken away from you. And that will be the day that you look back and you regret the choices that you've made, because you no longer have that decision of this or this. This one's disappeared. And so you have to, while you can, grasp at everything you have the physical and mental capacity to do.
I think that's like such a
Went on a bit of a rant there. I'm sorry.
so just don't your soapbox to stand on next, yeah. But that's such a good point. Like, whilst you have the capacity to do it, do it. Like, and if that is you have the capacity to go outside and enjoy the not so sunny weather that it is in the UK at the moment, or whether you have the capacity to like stay inside and go to the gym and move your body, like whether you have the capacity to cook yourself a nutritious meal, that's not something that's a given that you're going to have every day. So when you get the opportunity to do it, take it. And just by having that perspective shift of just being like, oh, I'm so grateful that I get to do these things, you will enjoy them a heck of a lot more, and you will find it a lot more motivating. So when you're feeling like, oh, I can't really be asked to go out for a walk, I can't really be asked to like cook myself a nutritious meal, I can't really be asked to do X, Y, and Z, you can just turn around and just be like, well, actually, I'm really grateful that I get the opportunity to choose. Like, how cool is it that I get the choice of doing these things? Not everybody can have these, and I might not always have these options. And as you said, for you, like, it was like one day in probably less than 30 seconds, your life changed. Like, that you all of a sudden had that taken away from you. So, like, just if you are able to do these things, recognizing that how privileged
It's
you
a
are to be
choice.
able to do them. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think
Oh,
like people, sorry.
no, no, go ahead.
I think that people a lot of the time have this notion of, oh, but I can't do that. I can't do this. And I'm like, no, you can. I I I refuse to let my clients tell me they can't do something, especially like fair enough if they physically can't do it, if you're not at a point where you can't,
Got
but
a broken leg,
say,
can't squat. Well,
yeah, we probably can though, can't no. Like, so a big thing that I have instilled, I feel like we might be jumping a few steps, but I want to say it just before I forget,
yeah.
is that lean into autonomy, lean into the fact that you have choice of everything. So if you're saying, oh, I can't get, this is coming from my point of view, like especially with like physique development and stuff. I'd be like, oh, I can't do my cardio in the morning. No, no, you can. You're choosing not to because that is not your priority. And I think
Mhm.
taking ownership also removes the negative and limiting self-talk that we give ourselves, because it's almost being like there is a cap and there's a capacity of what you're able to do. Whereas just being like, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do my cardio in the morning because da 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 da. Take ownership of the choice that you've made. I'm not saying that you have to always be doing something, but I think taking ownership and being like, well, I can cook myself a nutritious meal. I don't want to. Except you can do it. It's not that you can't, you just don't want to right now, whether it's because you can't be arsed and you would rather the convenience and instant dopamine of ordering food. That's okay. Just say that. But
Yeah.
again, allowing yourself to, one, recognize the situation you're in, be thankful for the fact that you have the ability to do so, and then making that decision and standing on it.
Yeah, I think that's such a good point, and like recognizing that the choices that you are making are choices and not just like it's not things that are happening to you. And I think that's something that's so important for you to recognize is that like life isn't passive, it's active. It is made up through lots and lots of little choices. If you are passively making those choices, then life is going to happen to you, but it doesn't have to. And I think
Mhm.
like for you, when you said there like that, oh, you can do it, like you have the option to do it, you have
Yeah.
the, and I think the thing is like if you have the capacity to do it, you can do it. There will be
Mhm.
times where you can't necessarily do that to 100%. It might not be that you can do like 10,000 steps a day, but you can do 8,000. You can still get out for a walk. Like you just can't do the 10,000 or like whatever. And that's where that next best thing mindset comes in. But I think the
Yeah.
main thing that you've said there is like recognizing that it's a choice and that it's you who gets to decide who does that. And like
Yeah.
that to me is one of the most empowering and most disappointing things to ever hear, because you realize the power is yours and then you realize that the power is yours.
Yeah.
That really sucks because you're like, oh,
1,000%. 'Cause you're like,
right.
well, I really thought it was everyone else's fault that I'm not exactly where I want to be. And like you said, like life, you can't control the external. You cannot control what everybody else does or how the world happens, but you can decide how you react to it. You can decide the next decisions, the next steps that you take as a response to the things that have happened. And
Mhm.
that, like you say, it's so freeing and so like empowering. And also you go,
It
well, I
sucks.
could have been making like some other decisions. This feels a little bit shit.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. June 2019, June 2019, so been 2020, June 2020,
2020.
you were up and walking again, and you're actually managing to get yourself out for your 1 hour allowed walk time per day, probably at that
An
point.
hour?
Um,
No, we're talking like 10 minutes, hon.
no, no, but we're only allowed an hour at that point in the in those COVID days. But yeah, so you were getting yourself out for your 10-minute walk, or you did your first 10-minute walk. What
Yeah.
happened next? Obviously, I'm jumping the gun here. I know where the story goes. But like, what was the next step that happened, or what was the next thing that you realized once you were at the point where you were walking pretty regularly and you were managing
Mhm,
to walk again?
mhm. I clearly didn't get the double hint that the universe gave me, and I applied for the army again. Yeah, no, I didn't. The two times I've been rejected weren't enough, so I just had to go. Make sure third time's a charm. And I actually
You're just triple checking that you don't want me, and the universe is going, girl, stop.
stop. What more signs do we need to give you?
I'm not hitting you with another car.
No, literally, I decided that no, again, I've always been a very stubborn, quite a headstrong person. And that's even when I was super anxious as a child, I still always in my brain was like so sure on like the decisions or whatever I decided. And I went back. I had like initially, like just after that point, I had like a phased return because I was a waitress at the time. So I was also classed as like a key worker when things like slowly started to open up.
Yeah,
So
when
I
he
had a
out to help out was going on.
yeah, that one. So I
that
actually
COVID
had
super spreader, yeah.
oh, so is key. That was essential. I worked in an Italian, so I did a phased return for like I think I was doing like 12 hours a week, and then it went up to like 16 hours a week, and blah blah blah. And then once I was at a point where I was like at a physical functioning capacity, like my mental still wasn't there, especially around like my memory and stuff. So I also started to really struggle being a waitress, just like keeping orders. And if people ask me stuff in passing, I have auditory processing disorder now, so I have to a lot of the time be able to see people's mouths. It's not that I'm deaf. There's nothing actually wrong with like my eardrums, but the processing of what people are saying, unless I can depict their mouth movement, because I read lips a lot, just doesn't exist. Like it's like my brain just doesn't know what it's being told. So I struggled doing my sin, and I was like, I can't do this forever. Like it's not it then me and this aren't conjoining, and I'd been doing it since I was 16. And so I started at a military prep college, which again, I know I should have listened to the world the 2 times before, but I didn't. And again, I got myself to being the fittest and the fastest. I was faster and stronger then than I was when I first applied. And
It's crazy after
I,
a car accident and you stop being able to walk, like.
yeah, like I was so determined to fulfill what I thought was my purpose, to get to the point that I had again put as like the pinnacle of who I was and the success that what meant I was successful. I was so driven to just like achieve that because I felt like I'd failed. I felt like I was a failure if I didn't, because it was all that my life from the age of 13 was working on becoming. And they didn't want me. I'd still like I essentially had to be 5 year. They didn't tell me this, obviously, because the last time I applied, I just cancelled the assessment date because the car accident happened. But after I'd worked and I'd reapplied, I had to be 5 years clear from a seizure. But I was only 3 at the time. And so they didn't want me. I couldn't join. And it felt like I'd had my heart broken all over again, because I was like, well, so not only did I spend all that time getting to the point where I could apply, and I obviously was in the accident, I then have spent this past 3 years getting myself to a point where I can apply, and again, they don't want me. What else can I do? There's nothing I can do, and I don't have anything that I care about as much as I cared about getting in the army. And it's not even that I'm super patriotic, but there was just like the physicality, the community, the routine, the fact there was structure and purpose. And I was like, I've got nothing left. I've got nothing else that gives me what that was promising me, what that was going to give me. And so I stayed working at the restaurant for like a good 2-3 years, like
Yeah.
post accident anyway. And then I was making videos, like started making YouTube videos. And that was where I started to like find joy again. I found like so much excitement in being creative. And I've always been into photography, but then I like moved into like videography with YouTube because I've always been a YouTube kid as well. And I found that the things that I would always lean to was fitness content. I would do like fitness challenges or like food challenges with my sister. And making them and getting them out and producing them myself, like that was where I was getting really excited, and I was getting so happy, like trying different things. And I ended up getting a job working for a production company. I got reached out by a TV show on the BBC, and it was essentially competing for a job in a production company. And I remember being like, well, I don't know what else I'm doing with my life. And right now I love making videos. So sure, fuck it, why not? And I actually ended up winning and I actually ended up getting a job in this production company. And I was like, okay, maybe this is the direction that I was meant to go in. Like, I discovered making films, making like videos and stuff, and it's led me to this point. And I've clearly got something about me because I won. Like, and so I worked at a production company doing advertisement. So I was making like short form content mainly and like BTS stuff for different brands. And then I think I was there for just over a year. And one reason or another, I got sacked. I
Oh,
just moved into, yeah, it was the the essential underlining was that they didn't actually have a place for me. Like, they basically went on the show for like publicity and didn't actually think that they would have somebody that they had to like have a job for. Um, and so it came around to like your review, and it was like, no, we don't have you. But I
there's no job
just moved.
basically. Yeah.
There's no job. Yeah, like I just moved into a flat, and a new flat, literally 2 weeks before I lost my job. And obviously, how do I now pay bills? And so there was I would say about a month. Obviously, you get your like your last lump sum from a job, like if you get let go. And I was like, right, to my now fiance, I was like, we have to make this stretch. Like, she was finishing her degree at uni, so she wasn't working. And I was like, I don't know what we're gonna do. Like, my old boss from the restaurant was always like, you can come back here. But I knew I didn't, at that point, I didn't have the capacity. And I also didn't want to feel like I was regressing, because I knew that would have a knock on my mental really bad. I knew that I would see, I would personify that as a failure, as a fail, and
Yeah.
something that I had done wrong, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that
Um,
completely makes sense.
and so I ended up working in a recycling center. Do you know where you go and like everyone's like, oh, you go into the tip. It's not a tip, it's a recycling center because we separate everything. And so that's where I ended up working. And it was probably the most perfect thing that I could have done, which is jarring because that doesn't make sense. I was stood outside for 12 hours, but I didn't I didn't have to think. I didn't have to plan. It allowed me to have a real good mental reset and like just be like, okay, I come to work, I do my work, I go home and I have nothing else to do. And I get to actually think about who I am and what I want to do. And life is like, I'm back to being physically capable. What is my purpose? What do I want? What do I want to do for the world? What do I want to do for me? What is it that I want to achieve? And being in that space of nothing, like, not disrespecting those that work on the recycling centers, but it's a very mindless job where you just speak to people, and people will divulge a little bit into shit that's going on, and you give them a little bit of, oh, well, try this and this, have a good day, mate. It was lovely. It was so good. It was so nice. It was exactly what my brain needed. And I was training in the gym at the time with my friend, and a poster got put up for PT Academy. And I would spend on my days off, I would spend like 3-4 hours in the gym. It was my favorite place. I would go in and just do deadlifts for like 2 hours because it was so, I was like, can you see how much weight I can lift? Like, it was so fun. And I remember when the poster went up in the gym and the manager came over to me and he was like, have you thought about being a PT? He was like, you spend more time in this gym than I do. You may as well get paid for it. And I remember thinking, all right, I haven't actually thought about that. I don't know why I haven't thought about it, but I wanted to be a PTI in the army. I wanted to be an engineer, and then I wanted to be a PT for my corps anyway. And I was like, I don't know why those dots never connected. And so I started my PT qual, like, and that was essentially the start of the end.
That's really interesting because obviously you went through a few phases there where you were like purposeless, and every time like you found your purpose, it kind of kept on getting like knocked out of you. The universe was really putting you in some funny directions.
Yeah,
But like
you could say
obviously
that.
like you were like, okay, I've started to get creative. I've started to find this like I've started to find like production, and then like you got the job, and like, oh, maybe this is where I'm meant to be, and started to like, I guess, envision a life in that, I imagine, for like the most part. And then all of a sudden that was taken away from you. And whilst that is definitely not as like traumatic as a car crash, like that is still a big traumatic event to have happened. And like within such a short period of time as well, have been like, I have this purpose, I don't have this purpose, I have this purpose, I don't have this purpose. Like that is a really, really tough thing to like come back from. I guess through like all of that, like up until like that point, what kind of like what kept you going? What kept you kind of like what I guess what made you bounce back every time?
I would say that without it sounding pretentious or I don't know if entitled is the word, but I always knew that there was more. I knew that I wasn't ready to settle for what I was like the situation that I was currently in. And again, I knew that no one was going to save me. No one was going to take me out of the situation. No one else was going to make me feel better than I already felt besides myself, because nobody knows what's going on in my head besides me. And so I allowed myself to feel. I think there's also a big thing at the minute where people like are wanting you to rise and grind and push through, and like progress is the only thing, but there's also progress in being still. Like you have to be able to feel the things that you're going through. And there was times when, like I say, even in between the time of losing the job in media and then getting a job on the recycling center, there was like a good month and a bit where I either cried, I just sat and watched TV, films. I used food. I would either eat or I would not eat, because I was like, I have no control over anything else, but I can control either what I'm putting in my body or what I'm not putting in my body. And that's completely my choice. And so allowing yourself, but also understanding why you're doing the things you're doing, I think really allowed me to navigate that time and be like, okay, I might feel like I'm a failure. I might feel like I'm good for nothing. I'm not destined to be anything, because I've had these passions and these like goals and I've not achieved them, or I've had them and I've not been good enough to keep them. And I could have personified that. I could have really let that resonate. And there are obviously times when they did. I'm human. Everybody's human. But when you get into a space where you felt it and you've worked through it a bit, and making that separation between what you know and how you feel. So I felt like I was a failure. I felt like I wasn't going to amount to anything. I knew that wasn't true. And this side of my brain could give me that rationale. But then there's that voice in your head that will still continuously try and give you that little ounce of doubt and that negative self-talk, because your brain wants to keep you safe. Your brain wants to keep you where you are, because that's what it knows.
It's a shame the car crash didn't knock that part out of your brain, isn't it?
Oh, I know. My parents wished it did too, truly. Truly, everybody was baffled. They'd be like, "Are you sure you're doing this again?" And I was like, "It's the right choice. Trust me. Trust me. It's the way we want to go." So I think that the bounce back comes in truly believing that you don't want to live in the situation that you're currently in, and just believing that you're meant for more, that there's more to life than where you currently are, I would say was my biggest driving force for whenever something went wrong, being like, okay, how do we pivot? How do we get out of this lull faster than we got out of the last one?
That's really interesting. Like that is something that I often talk about with people. It's like the speed to return. Like often I talk about it in that like micro context of okay, so you fell off track with your meal out, like in your speed to return is, well, did it take you 3 days to get back to normal, or did it take you 12 hours? Like what was your speed to return? Like in that sense there, you were like, how am I gonna get back to like normal, or quote unquote normal, but like how am I going to get back to that point, and like how can I do it, like how can I bounce back faster? And like that ultimately is what is going on, I guess, in that micro sense, but in that macro sense as well. Like whenever life throws some shit at you, like you've got to be able to bounce back from it, because to think that there will never be things go wrong in life, I think is setting yourself up for failure. Bad things happen, like people get hit by cars, people die, people like shit happens, like, and that's something that like we can't control, but what we always can control is how we respond and how we react. And there is absolutely power in, exactly as Leah said, like feeling the moment and like feeling those feelings and letting yourself process those things. But there's also power in not feeling hopeless and defenseless and feeling like you've got nothing left to like give. So like make sure you take autonomy over that situation and take responsibility in that situation, but also let yourself take responsibility for feeling as well. Like you're allowed to have those feelings.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I like a little mantra of go through and grow through. Learn from whatever's happened. Like, because it's happened, you can't change the past, but you can change and decide how you're going to respond to it, because there's multiple ways, multiple points on the timeline where I could have decided to go a different route. I could have very easily turned to drinking and partying and drugs, literally anything to drown what I was feeling in that moment. But that wasn't something that I was willing to even indulge in, because that wasn't the life I wanted to live in the long run. And like you say, it's just about letting yourself process, because I think there's also damage in suppressing the things you're feeling, because they'll come up at the most unexpected times. But once you have processed them, it's saying, okay, how do I let this not be a dictator for where I now live life? How can I keep progressing out of this hole that I don't want to be in and get myself to a position where I'm happy and comfortable and content?
Yeah, I think that's a really good way of putting it. Like, how do you get to that point where you are happy, comfortable, and content? And that's effectively what you're pushing through. You're not pushing through for perfection. Like, you're not
No.
pushing through for something that potentially isn't realistic, like now, or like might not exist. But how do
Yeah.
you push through to that point of like what can be that new normal? What is that new standard for, like, yeah, what makes you happy? So you've become a PT. You've done your PT qualification. And I guess you are moving your body again in a way that like you felt good to you, like has always felt good to you in your life, but not as not necessarily been something that you've been capable of doing. So like
Yeah.
at that point, that must have been pretty like a pretty full circle moment. Like, oh, I'm exercising, like I'm able to do this like for a living effectively.
Yeah.
And yeah, how did that feel?
It was strange at first. I remember like so many times like spending like, I mean, you've done it before, like 12, 14-hour days in a gym. And then you're just like, I just spent all day just like talking to people, helping people. And like you say things and it's like, that was really like, that was actually good. I can't believe that came out of my brain. That's so go me. And I think that was how I felt so much at first. Like shocked that I was good, like I was helpful and I actually was able to teach people and change the way that they think about things and their body and food and whatever, and get them a result where they were now in a position where they felt how I felt when I got to a position where I was happy. And I was like, oh, this is it. I think this is it. I like this a lot. And it just, the business just like kept expanding from there.
I think that's a really good point. Like when you are doing something that feels like aligned with your purpose, and when you're doing something that's like, I mean, if you've listened to the episode that I did last week about like motivation and like feeling motivated in January, you'll know I spoke through like the four things that come down to like motivation as like a framework. Is it values aligned? It sounds like it was values aligned, because exercise for you, having that autonomy, being able to move your body, values aligned. Is it goal aligned? Yes, it's goal aligned, because you're able to move your body in a way that feels like good, and it kept you going forwards. You felt capable at it. Like that was one of the other like things. And it was also enjoyable. Like you enjoyed feeling capable, but you enjoyed being able to move your body, something that for a period of time you couldn't do. Like, so
Yeah.
no wonder like this was a motivating thing. No wonder this felt good, and no wonder this felt like your purpose, because like it actually aligned with everything that you would need it to feel like motivating. Like that is so exciting that like you kind of came to that place. And sometimes like when like bad things happen and you've taken detours in your life to kind of get to the point where you feel like you've currently got
Few
purpose or
detours.
whatever. Yeah, a few details, a few trips down the wrong street. But when you've taken like those like detours, sometimes it's worth just taking a moment and going, actually, if those things hadn't have happened, I wouldn't have been able to get to here. Like one of the things that I always say, like, so for me, when I was in school, I was always like, right, I always basically felt like the top of my class. And that was very much like something that had happened since primary school. And I really wanted to go to Cambridge, did my interview at Cambridge, and I didn't get in.
How
And I
did
got
I never know that?
and I got a letter from them, and the letter basically said, you're not smart enough. Like, you are not smart enough to come to Cambridge. And 17, 18-year-old Holly, that obviously like broke my heart. Everything that I'd obviously thought I worked towards, like similar to kind of point to you, like I'd had that purpose. But
Yeah.
without that happening, I then wouldn't have gone to Lancaster, and like I wouldn't have had a great time at Lancaster. I wouldn't have exercised the way that I did at Lancaster. Like, so I always like try to say, like, there are things that will happen in your life. You've just got to see them as, well, without those things happening, I wouldn't have been able to get to here. I wouldn't have been able to learn those lessons that I needed to learn then to get me to this point. So like, whilst shit happens, like you can learn from that shit and use that to grow through. And like what you said, like, what was it? What you go through, you grow through. Like
Yeah.
like where that happens, you can get to a better place and have something that gives you more purpose, or like is actually more aligned to who you want to be in this phase of your life, versus what you could have been, like in the past when we were holding on to like a previous, I guess, a previous identity. Like
Yeah, for
if you
sure.
have kept on holding on to that identity of you, like you at 16 thinking you were going to be in the army, and you were still holding on to that now, well, that'd have been kind of shit. Like, like you wouldn't have
Yeah,
been
I
able
wouldn't be
to,
where I am right now at all.
yeah, and like you wouldn't have been able to get to here if you'd have been holding on to those things. So I think part of resilience and part of recognizing what's happened within your life is also recognizing that it's okay to let go, like, and it's okay
Yeah.
to move on from those things and like move through those things. Yeah. Do you have anything to add to that?
No, I think for sure, like the whole letting go of an identity and like allowing things to just be what they were is a big one. Like I literally have, I don't know if you'll be able to see it. I literally have meant to be tattooed on my arm. And that was the very first tattoo that I got. And there was a day I'm not an impulsive person, especially with things like tattoos and like things that are super permanent. My brain sometimes gets a bit stressed about. And I remember it just came like I was just sat and I was like, I'm not happy with the things that have happened. Obviously, I'm not. And if I could go back and change it, I wouldn't ever just say, yeah, I'd be hit by a car. Like, well, it was
Weird thing to wish on yourself.
yeah, a bit strange. But like being able to be like, well, what's meant to be will be. If the world was trying to stop me from going in the army so hard that it knew I was so headstrong that the only way to do it was to put a physical barrier in the way, like then there's something there that was I feel like I was now meant to be where I'm supposed like where I am right now. And in the journey of getting to this point, it didn't always feel like that. I had points where I felt really lost and confused and stressed and unable to connect with the person that I was and the person that I held as the pinnacle and the core of me becoming. They were so synonymous. My day-to-day actions were so in line with Leah, who was joining the army, that when I knew that wasn't an option anymore, that version of me, that identity that I had, couldn't coexist with whoever I was gonna become. They are not synonymous. They can't live in tandem because I will never join the army. But then being like, what was it? What things caused me to have such a love for it? Where can I pull that I would still want that to be part of the identity of who I'm working on becoming? And of course, the physical aspect, the community, the resilience, the growth, like that all is now part of who I am and part of who I'm still working on becoming. I don't think you're ever a finished product because you always find things there you want to develop and you want to grow and you want to change. But I know that whoever I am becoming and the person that I am currently, that is what I've took from that past identity that I had to let go.
Yeah. And I think that's like a really good way of putting it is like, yeah, you had to let go of that past identity to get to this point, like to be this version of you that you are like happy with, you are comfortable, you are content. Like, to, I mean, hopefully I'm not putting words into your mouth. Hopefully you are happy,
Oh,
comfortable, and content. But like
oh, all good.
to get to this version, like you had to let go of that version and like move on to being something new, being someone new. And like that's all right. Like we are meant to evolve. We are meant to not to steal Taylor Swift's word here, but like we are meant to have eras. Like we are meant to like have periods of life that you move through, and certain things are right in that era and certain things are wrong in that era. Like, and that's okay.
Mhm.
Yeah. So obviously after all this happened, I know you then had a quite the big physical challenge that you underwent after
Which one?
after not being able to walk, and then you went and did the marathon. Do you want to talk us through that?
I did. I did London Marathon as my first ever running challenge. I'd never ran uh, like any substantial distance. I think the most I'd ever ran was like 7K or something. And I was lay on my sofa, and I think it might have actually been around the time of the Olympics. And I'd watched the mixed triathlon relay, and I want to say Alex Yee,
Oh
does
yeah,
that,
yeah. Alex Yee is
that name?
definitely a triathlete. Yeah.
Yeah. So he'd finished his running portion, and I remember thinking, I don't like riding a bike. I hate riding a bike, but I can see the joy that he's got in his body, and I want it. I wasn't doing a triathlon, and my brain was like a marathon, and this is leaning into the whole I do not let myself have almost. If I get a desire to do something and it is strong enough to evoke emotion, not just those fleeting passing things of, oh, that'd be fun, and then it goes. I remember like it was in my brain, and I think it was in my brain for about a week. I remember being like, the worst that can happen is you walk. The worst you can happen is you walk. You would literally you will complete a marathon, because I also knew there was no way that I would give. I would have to physically be incapable for me not to cross the finish line. And I signed up for the London Marathon after only ever doing like 7K. And I was like, I remember people being like, do you not want to do like a half? And I was like, no,
Nah.
I don't want to do
Marathon or
that.
nothing.
Marathon or nothing, because I think to me, I set an encompassing feeling that I knew that people still saw me as Leah in the wheelchair. I knew that people still, like, especially like my parents, they obviously love me and they worry. And it felt like my mum, there was still a bit of mollycoddling of, oh, she like, no, not that she said I was broken, but that was how it felt. And I was like,
Felt
if
like
I do this,
bubble wrap.
yeah, like if I do this, no one can look at me as if I'm not somebody new, that I have not left Leah in a wheelchair behind. And I remember being like, all right, I'm doing it. And I did the London Marathon. I did it in like 9 hours and something. It was way too big of a goal, way too soon after being in a wheelchair, but I did it. And that was all that mattered to me. I wanted that medal, and I wanted to be able to be like, I did it. And it was a gateway into me just doing. I was hooked on, okay, well, if I can do that, I can go faster. And so I did another. And then once I did that, my goal for that one, I did Manchester. My goal for Manchester was sub 5. And I got just over. I got like 5:09.
To take like 4.5 hours off your marathon time though is still like insane. Like to just be like, so okay, so I couldn't walk at a point, and then I did a marathon, and then I did a marathon 4 hours faster than I did my first marathon. Like,
Yeah. But I remember like over time, I realized that, like, again, what's meant to be will be, what will be will be. And there is no point putting so much pressure on things you cannot control, because all it does is make you miserable. It makes you stressed. And I remember after London Marathon, initially being quite disappointed. And I remember Ellie is my fiance. Ellie was like, how are you disappointed in yourself right now? Like, you've just done a marathon, and 3 years ago, 4 years ago, however long it was, I did it in, I remember when I think I did it in 22. I did London. So it would have been 3 years after. She was like, you've just done a marathon. 3 years ago, you were in a wheelchair, and you're telling me that you're disappointed in the time you completed it. And do you understand, when you say it out loud, do you understand that that sounds ridiculous? And again, I was like, I know how it sounds. That doesn't change how I feel. I feel like I failed. I feel like I should have done more. Manchester rolled around, and it actually happened because one day Ellie said to me, I had a dream yesterday that I did a marathon, and I booked it. I booked it for us both.
you said, did Ellie do it with you, or did you just do her dream?
No, I booked it for us both. And she was like, what? I literally went to her like maybe 4 hours after she said it. And I was like, we're doing Manchester Marathon. And she was like, what? And I was like, we do not settle for almost in this family, girly pot. I was like, you said you had a dream, and I made that dream come true. Let's start training.
She's like, I just meant that I thought about doing a marathon. So now I have to do a marathon.
Yeah. And that, again, it was a limiting belief she had. She always said she can't run. She used to play hockey at a national level, and she was in goal. She can't run. That's not who she is. Like, she's got strong legs. She's quite, like, she can hold her own, but she doesn't run. Cardio, she would skip doing like the conditioning portion of her trainings. Like, that is how bad it was. And I remember just being like, I know, I can see the potential you have, and I know that this is a mental block you have. It is not physical. And we started training, and her goal was sub 6 and mine was sub 5. So we also knew that I wasn't going to be there to be giving this motivation on the run. Like, I knew it was going to be all in her head as well as mine. And when we did Manchester, the polarizing finishing pictures of me from London and me from Manchester, I got to think, mile, I want to say like 21 maybe, and hit the wall. The wall
Yeah, because
of
if
this
you
is,
hit the wall, that's usually where people hit, somewhere between 20 and 21, I think.
yeah, I hit the wall of, right, this, we're still going. We've still got some time left, and this is hard. And I think maybe about 4K before the end, I knew that I wasn't going to get sub 5. And me previous, I would have said me previous, I would have probably got emotional, like, because I was like, I have worked hard. I did a full training block, and I'm not somebody who has ever been drawn to cardio. Like, I just saw marathons as like this really big physical challenge that I felt like if I accomplished that, then that was a really good, strong notch to put on my belt of achievements and creating this new identity of who I was. I was somebody who did hard things. And instead of getting upset, I pulled back. I was like, what I'm going to do is revel in this finish. And I finished and I was smiling. I finished and like, I got my race day pictures, and even though I didn't hit my goal, I couldn't change the fact that I initially wasn't fast enough. I knew that I wasn't going to get 5 hours. And I said, you know what? I'm going to act like everybody on this crowd is here for me. People were shouting my name. I was waving. Kids wanted high fives. They were all getting them. I was indulging in it, and I was embracing the process and the journey of getting to that finish line, because I also had worked really hard. The marathon, yes, was the end accomplishment, but like you say, to go from London, that was a position that was, I should have been proud of myself for where I got physically, but I still was beating myself up because I wasn't enough. Whereas Manchester, I was like, I did all the work I needed to do, and it's just that now wasn't my time, and that is okay. And so what I'm going to do is enjoy the process of getting to this final step. And Manchester was stunning. And I finished Manchester. My marathon itch was scratched. I didn't need to do another.
And that's what you want. You want your marathon itch to be scratched. You don't want to be feeling worse after it and feeling like I need to do another one.
No, and
This is how people end up doing 50 marathons.
Oh, London did that. London didn't scratch the itch. I didn't feel like London, what I thought I needed from it, I didn't get, but what I actually needed from it, I also didn't get. And Manchester, what I thought I needed, which was a sub 5 hour, I didn't get, but what I actually needed was the fact that I really accepted I can only control what I can control. I can put my best into everything, and whatever comes from that comes from it. And that is okay, because certain things are going to take more time than we initially think. So you just have to keep going. And there will be a day, I know what I'm like, there will be a day I go again. There will be a day I decide I'm ready to give it a bit more. But I got what I needed from it in that time. And I think it's also another big thing to take is it's okay to say, I'm putting a pause on that for now. That doesn't have to be a sign that you've failed. You've just decided that what you actually need from it in this time, you've got. And when something comes back around, you can just pick it back up again.
With you saying that there, like my head immediately went to what a moment of growth, like from like scared 13-year-old Leah who was running at things to fit in, you all of a sudden didn't feel like you needed to like fit into that anymore. Like you were like, this is okay. Like it felt like you actually probably finally gave yourself like time to just enjoy and be present. And like that is such a hard thing to do. Something happened like when I did my half marathon back in October. I was going for a sub 2. Like I was like, this is, it could be possible. I was like, I'm not sure whether I'll get it or not, but it's a definitely a possibility. I went out, I ran a really strong race, and at about kilometer 18, I'd hit the wall at about maybe 17 and a half. Kilometer 18, I was like, I can't push through it. I can't get those last like 3 kilometers that I need at the speed that I need to do it to actually get sub 2 here. I was like, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to run the best race that I can. I'm going to push through. I know that today this is the best that I have ever paced a half marathon before. I was like, what an achievement that is to be able to say that. And like, just that moment like there, like, and it sounds like it might have been a similar one for you, like just to turn around and be like, I've done everything that I can, and that is all I can ever ask of myself. And like, that is something you should be so, so proud of if you ever get into that position and you're like, I've done everything that I can. It's all right. I didn't get the outcome that I wanted, but it's all right because I know that I threw everything that I could throw at this task. And I am grateful for the person that I've become for doing that. And the person that you've become is the more important thing out of that than anything else that you could get, than any medal, than any time, than anything like that. It is who you are because of doing that.
Yes, 1,000%. Like was speaking to someone the other day and they were saying how they really wanted to look a certain way. Obviously, being in the gyms in January, there's a lot more bodies, there ends up being a lot more comparison. And
Yeah.
they essentially, it was like, how do I get the body of my dreams in the fastest way possible? And I was like, right, we need to pull this back because I could give you everything that you want right now. I could give you the body, the bum, the back, whatever you want, whatever you wrote to me on a list, here it is, take it. But you will lose it in 6 months' time because you have not built up the time, you've not put in the energy, the effort, done the reps, and learnt the lessons that need to be learned in order for you to maintain that. Like
Mhm.
I say part of the goal is the journey because the journey of becoming will allow you to keep the goal, keep the thing that you achieve. And so I didn't keep my athletic ability. I've not run half as much as I did when I was doing that. But the journey allowed me to, like you say, make that big breakthrough of just understanding I can only give my all. And if I've done that, then whatever comes from me giving my all is what is meant to be in that current moment. So me doing the marathon didn't turn me into somebody who is obsessed with running, but what it did turn me into is somebody who just knows that it's okay. Like just having the ability to be like, it's okay. And I learned that, and that has meant that I've carried that through
Yeah.
into this portion and for every other portion of my life from that point on.
I think they're like, that's just such a good way of looking at it. Like, I learned the lesson that I needed to learn at that point. Like, and I learned what I needed to learn, and then I'm good to go now. Like, and I'm good to go on to what's next. And I think
Mhm.
that's something that sometimes people don't do when they get stuck in previous identities. They get stuck in that I wanted to do this when I grow up. I wanted to do this. I wanted to then do this. I thought I was going to do this. But actually, sometimes it's okay to just go, learn that lesson, on to new things. Like, we're on to the next version now. And like, going back to that person there where you said about their dream body, like, and if you could give them that body, yeah, they've not built the habits, they've not built the foundations of the person who can sustain it, of the person who makes those changes. So if you don't build if you don't build the foundations, like I always say, you wouldn't build a house on dodgy foundations. Why would you do the same with your
Mhm.
health and fitness? You can't
Mhm.
build a life on dodgy foundations. You've got to put the reps, and you've got to get the base first before you can move on, before you can like get to that next level. Like, and if you get to the top level but you haven't got the base, well, your house
It'll
is going to fall
crumble.
down. Yeah, like,
Yeah.
it's just not going to work. There'll be a little earthquake, there'll be a little thing in your life, and then all of a sudden it'll be off we go. Like, we'll be back to square
Yeah.
one. So like, we want to make sure that if we're building something, we're building it from the ground up, and we're building it right, and we're accepting where we are right now. We're accepting there will be challenges, but those challenges make the foundation stronger, and we can keep building on there and keep growing so that you can, I guess, finally reach a like self-actualized version of yourself. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe the fun is just always in pursuing the goal, or pursuing like the what's next, and having that drive and enjoyment. I know that for me, just drive and enjoyment, and like, I get a lot of enjoyment from just having a drive in life, having a purpose, having a mission that I'm working towards. Like, that gives me my get up and go. That helps me be consistent, even
I
if
think having a purpose is the
yeah.
purpose. I think when you don't have something you are working towards, it makes the actions you are taking feel aimless. And then you're
Mhm.
less inclined to take them. Like there's always got to be a reason why. And it doesn't have to be a big reason like a marathon or a half marathon or whatever, but a deeper rooted reason as to why you would get up on the days when you cannot be bothered, they're tired, it's wet, it's dark, whatever is feeling like a barrier or a roadblock. You have to have a reason as to why you go, I don't want to, but I'm gonna.
Yeah. And then that goes to, I'm going to choose to, just going right back to what we said at the start. That's I'm going to choose to do this because of this bigger thing, this thing that is bigger than me, this thing that I am working towards. That's why. Like, if you are struggling with motivation or anything like that, ask yourself, what is that bigger purpose? Because it might just be that that's not very clear. Like, it might be that you don't have that direction. So you're finding that you're jumping from thing to thing to thing. It might be diet to diet. It might be from gym routine to gym routine, but it's because you've not got a direction to head in. So find that purpose, find where you're heading, and you'll find it a lot easier to be resilient, or you find it a lot easier to be more motivated. You'll just find building those foundations easier. And then if you can learn the lessons along the way, ding, 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 you've done it.
Fine.
Yeah. So we'll wrap that all up there. But Leah, before you go, I would love to ask you a question that I ask everyone. What does being healthy mean to you?
I think being healthy means being free. And that is physically, mentally, like knowing yourself enough that you can do things, that you can move your body, that you can make informed decisions that you know align with the person that you're working on becoming. I think being healthy as a overarching word is just the epitome of being free and having choice, being
Yeah.
able.
I love that. Yeah, I really like that. It's like the being able and having choice and having that freedom to do what you like, do what you want to do. So if people want to find you, they want to follow you, they want to connect with you, where's the best place to do that?
Leah Caitlin Coaching is my Instagram handle. Drop me a follow, give me a shout. I rant a bit on there as well, so I kind of get taken on a few tangents.
And what I would recommend is go give Leah a follow. I will pop her a link to her Instagram as well in the show notes. So if you want to just click on that, you can access it straight from there. But otherwise, have an absolutely fantastic rest of day. And remember to give the episode a 5-star rating or review, and make sure to follow the episode, follow the podcast. We can't be missing out on these things, because we're missing out on the future episodes and future conversations of my lovely Yorkshire accent, and that would be a travesty. So I will catch you in the next one, and have a great rest of day.